Welcome back, everyone, to Stories of a Broken Sun. I'm Matt, your friendly guide here. My pronouns are he or they. You can find me on Twitter at ycaliber, follow the show at Broken Sun RPG, or you can go to our website, brokensunrpg.com. Today, we are doing a post-mortem on Seasons 1 and 2, the hub arc, I suppose. And we are going to be answering some questions sent in by audience members. Beyond that, we are going to hopefully get into some Session 0 stuff for the next season, but that'll be in a separate recording. Before I introduce everyone, I want to acknowledge that this podcast is produced on the unceded territory of the Katzie, Kwikwetlem, Stalo, Kwantlen, Stz'uminus, and Musqueam people, and the treaty land of the Tsawwassen First Nation. Please continue to support Indigenous land protectors and Indigenous people by going to the hashtag Settlers Saturday on Twitter and contributing to people's direct aid funds. Today, I am joined by our full cast of wonderful individuals. So let's start with Velvet.
Dark greetings, everyone. I'm Velvet Fayfair. You can find me pretty much everywhere on the interwebs at OG Brown Sugar, and I'm very excited to get to touch on some stuff that we didn't get to really showcase or dive into.
Excellent. And we're joined by Trudy.
Hi, I'm Trudy. My pronouns are they, them, and like everyone here, I'm excited to finally be back.
Mike.
It's me, Mike Blood. You can find me on Twitter at GoodSirBlood. And I'm not excited. I'm fully belligerent to find out what we've missed.
Ready to fight.
I'm ready to go.
And Keekers.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Keekers, also known as Be a Space Cat. I use she/her pronouns, and I don't know what to describe myself as other than a constant state of flux.
Constant state of flux.
That is fair.
Makes sense to me. Speaking of a constant state of flux, Seasons 1 and 2, we sure finished them.
That's true.
Yep.
That we did, Captain.
How do you all feel about where we ended up?
I feel right.
Yeah?
That was crazy. That was crazy.
I said that Velvet was quoting Face Self there.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty satisfied. It's certainly not necessarily where I expected everything to be, but that's always been the case since the start of this show. I had a couple of notes for going into Season 3, which I showed you all the guest packet that I made up. I knew that at some point the emergency was going to get there and consume the habitat, and I knew it was going to happen as a result of that. But beyond that, I didn't really plan out much in Season 2. I had very basic ideas, and we filled them in as we went. Here's a mission. Oh, that went interestingly. Here's another mission. Okay, well, let's see how that impacts the world. So I had a lot of fun trying to keep up with all the twists and turns that you were throwing out there, all of you. Should we dive into the questions, or are there any other thoughts that you'd like to share before we begin?
I think I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
My body's ready.
I mean, I was trying to think if there was any sort of like wisdom or knowledge I wanted to impart, but not really.
Maybe we'll have some by the end of this.
Yes.
So thank you to Dwayne Feenstra and to Helga for sending in some questions for us to answer today. We'll start with questions from Helga. Number 1 is, how did everyone name their characters? Anyone want to start here? Why don't we start with the Season 1 characters?
Well, can I answer for myself and Deg, because this kind of helps?
Yeah, of course.
Fill in some gaps there. So Whiskey dropped out early, and he had named his character Deg, and Keva. They both came from the same document that I used. This program, I don't know if it exists anymore, but it was called Vulgar Language or something like that. I know that generally means vulgar as in disgusting, but it meant something else. I can't remember. I don't know if it's around anymore, but basically you could buy the program, the premium package, which would allow you to generate a whole language based on certain parameters and say just the general grammar, and then maybe so many thousand words. So I did that, and I said, hey, if anyone wants to use this, go ahead. And I picked out a name that I thought, or a word that sounded like a good name, which was Keva, which in the generated language meant backbone or your back. And I thought that was like a fun, it sounded like a name. And again, I thought, oh, that's a fun meaning. And Whiskey had picked Deg, which meant community. And I don't really think we ever used it that much. Again, I used it for some of Keva's family members, which I don't remember them right off the cuff, but that wasn't necessarily it. But anyway, come to find out, Keva is actually kind of like a female version of the name Kevin, like really old. And there's also like some building blocks that are also named Keva brand, which kind of cracks me up because it's like, oh, it means backbone in this fake language, and like, oh, building blocks are strong and all that. But yeah, I ended up liking it, kept it, and it was definitely better than the first name I put out there, which was Astrolabe, which was a really bad history joke because these star-crossed lovers had for some reason decided to name their illegitimate child Astrolabe in the medieval period. Yeah, it didn't make any sense other than it was me thinking, oh, that's really funny that they...
Oh my god.
Yeah, they decided to name their kid Astrolabe. It would be funny if there was a character named Astrolabe. And I'm glad I went with Keva because Keva's not as much of a joke character as others. I would love there to be a fun, sorry. Mike messaged me about Abelard and Heloise. That was the name of the parents, Astrolabe's parents, who... But yeah, it would be fun if we had an NPC named Astrolabe, but that was kind of the prototype at that time. So anyway, I'll stop talking and let someone else talk.
Yeah, Keva has certainly, I think, lived up to the fantasy meaning of backbone or the building blocks in a lot of ways. She's been a steady member of the party in a lot of ways.
Oh, that was kind of what I was going for when I was dreaming her up.
I see, is it vulgarlang.com?
Pretty sure that you post the right link there. We'll probably share it in the Discord later. I don't know if it's still up and running as much, but...
Oh, we can find out. It still exists, at least.
Yeah.
Who else wants to share the genesis of their name? I think the last name Jarma, that was from the document I made up, right?
Yeah, you kind of said, oh, these are different names that work or are common. And I just like the name Jarma because it sounds kind of like karma, which is a word I know. And I also thought it sounded a little bit more Southeast Asian, Indian, Arab, which was some of my idea for part of a big chunk of Keva's genetic makeup.
Yeah. I can talk about that document some more later on once we've gone through everyone else's name. Sorry, who was next?
I can go next. So actually, I pulled Zora's name from that document, if I recall correctly. And I chose the name because it sounded cool, but I chose Zora in particular because I'm a huge Zelda fan. And so I was like, I love the Zora. So I'm going to go with Zora, which I know is not a very thoughtful reason for choosing a name, but liking the name is just enough for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can pull up the meaning. Give me a minute, and I'll.
It sounds good too, Zora.
Yeah.
It's
a
fun
strong
to say.
name. Yeah,
it's a strong name for a strong lady.
Hell yeah.
We should have maybe done Oob, which was just OB, which means road. Now that I'm pulling up this document again.
Oh wow! So I'm looking it up, and the meaning of Zora is dawn.
Perfect.
Oh
yeah. Wow.
And you picked the last name Jackson, spelled with the ZH at the front.
I did. I like the way it looked.
Yeah, it looks good. It's got a kind of almost Marvel character or DC character, like superhero character from the Golden Age deal, alliteration.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I just want to say that another word in this old document is Zir, which is ZIR, and it means watch, which I love. But yeah, maybe I should post this at some point. It's not a document anymore. I just kind of screenshotted it, so it's technically an image. And it's funny because if you go through it, you will see that I accidentally highlighted sex or from the word sexually aroused because I think I was searching through a couple different things just to see what they were doing. And I was wondering, like, oh, is this like a swear word we could use at some point? And I decided to go against that.
Probably for the best.
Yeah. I was trying to find like our Criff or whatever, but
Let's see, Emran Pak or Maeve Sentis.
I can jump in. So Sentis was kind of a safe choice. Just I took that from the sample ones in the document. I went with Maeve because I think at the time that we started, I was taking a really awesome Celtic mythology class in college, and I was so into it that I was like, all right, let me borrow something. So Maeve ended up Maeve with the awesome spelling. Her mother ended up Boudica, and her father was Lou.
Yeah, it was definitely a strong through line for her family line there.
I was just going to say Maeve's a great character in Irish mythology.
Oh, absolutely.
It's kind of funny to think back on who we were, 4 years ago now, and the types of interests we had that led
I would
to.
prefer not to.
Think about how those interests impacted what the story became, what the characters became. But speaking of which, Emran Pak, where'd that come from?
So Emran was a name I made up when I used to play the Old Republic. I had an Imperial spy named Emran.
Oh yeah,
that's really it wasn't a randomly generated name. I just punched keys and that came out, and I was like, oh, that's great. And it's very close to an Arabic named Emran, which I believe means prosperity.
Well, something Emran has found now, at least.
Thank goodness. But yeah, it was fully complete accident. I just really liked the name. And Pak, I think I got off the document that you created.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it had any meaning.
Well, Pak is an existing name. I guess I can talk a little bit about that document. It's still there if you go to the Charge and References channel. We never ended up using that much. But
I like to go into it sometimes and look back at how we can't edit it and that it's all still season 1 stuff. And I'm like, wow, it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's the archive.
Been a while.
Yeah, so I put together this little document of common surnames, and that was 2017, early 2017. I made this up, and it had, let's see, common surnames, and then in brackets, Q is pronounced as CH, and ZH is pronounced like J, and this came from the Chinese influence. So I knew from the start, obviously, what was going on in the world and why why Gov's domain was the way it was. I knew that it was because the people in the Sun who had created this mythology and built this culture, they did it by the way that a lot of a certain type of common fantasy writer might. And probably we can just go ahead and say old white dudes often would do this, where they would go and they would just take a bunch of non-Western cultures and jam them together and say, this is the exotic group. So I sort of viewed the people of the Sun in that lens. They were the people who were doing this fantasy world building in the way that, your old school white fantasy author would. And so to me, well, what makes sense there? What if I took a bunch of Asian and Southeast Asian cultures and just jammed together their linguistic conventions with some Western things, for quote unquote relatability? So that's where I was back in 2017 when I put this together. So the names that I ended up with were Agarwal, but spelled differently, Chima, Qeema, Lee, which I figured there'd probably just always be Lees, Jiang, but Jying, or Ang rather, Kwok, but instead of Quoch, it was Kwoch, Huang, but with a W, Kim with a Y, Jongson, which was like a mixture of Jong, Jiang, and Johnson, Patelson, because I figured sometimes people just put son on the end of a word, and Patel is an existing name, Lal, Jarma, Pak, which is just a Korean name, Mun, Cruz, Sentis, Reyes, Chan, Qan, and Jackson, ZH. So I just took Asian and Southeast Asian names and changed the spellings up with Chinese pinyin conventions, and then put a Western spin on it and said, this seems like the kind of thing an old fantasy writer would do. That's the genesis of that document, if you were curious about it.
Fun and sad.
Yeah, I know a lot of things that seemed like they were just fun or whimsical have turned out to be darker than we may have hoped.
I mean, I always think it's interesting in the last name conventions is like a lot of them mean child of or that sort of thing. So I feel like, well, it doesn't matter how I feel, but I think that's interesting that they kind of jam that in there with the sun, or I don't know. I think that's less egregious or less terrible.
Egregious?
Yeah, sorry, I can't pronounce it. It's
okay.
less terrible than, I think, just being like, oh, well, I'm going to do this other stuff, mangle these names in other ways. But again, I'm a white woman who just thinks that's, I don't have a real say.
I can't say that I would necessarily have done this the same way now as I did in 2017. Like, I'm a very different person from who I was when we started this show. My politics have changed quite a bit, and my understandings of things like intersectionality and oppression have evolved and continued to. But that at least was the reasoning behind it.
Well, what would you do now?
I honestly don't know, because I haven't really started making a new story since then. Like, the closest I've come is, okay, well, I do know what I would do now is I would not be so insular in my planning. I was really caught up when we started season 1 in, I don't want the players to know anything about what's really happening. I want everything to be a huge surprise, everything to be a big twist, everything to be a huge cliffhanger. And I have changed in how I approach storytelling. Like, I want things to be more collaborative now. And I would probably just say, hey, let's work together to generate what this culture is going to be like, what these names are going to be like. Because it shouldn't just be me, one white guy, coming up with all this stuff on my own without any input from anyone else. So that's what I would have done differently.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciated the surprises when we got them. I mean, I remember a few times where my mouth literally dropped in the middle of the game, which I can't say has happened for a lot of the games that I play in right now. But I also like, taking a more collaborative approach, and I'm glad that you're going that route going forward.
Yeah, I still have surprises. But oh
no,
I don't want like the entire premise of the whole story to be a surprise anymore.
Oh yeah, well, we definitely had a surprise when we played Street Magic.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think we'll probably get to that with some of these questions. But anyway, Helga's second question here. What are your favorite characters to play? And what is your favorite character that you don't play? Let's start with your favorite characters to play. Most of you have played more than one character over the course of these 2 seasons, between side stories, main stories, season breaks, inter-seasons, street magic, and so on. So what are your favorite characters to play?
Slip.
Why is that?
Oh, yeah.
I just love... I don't usually play characters that... I think I played Slip smarter than I am. And I don't usually play characters that are smarter than me. And I just like being Slip because Slip was a fun way to just be really goofy but extremely serious at the same time. And I don't know that I have that opportunity with every other character.
Slip was a really cool experience in, I think, coming up with a character, because we talked about a lot about what Slip is and what Slip was. But again, this is an idea again where we have that collaborative but still with surprises stuff. Like, I knew who was in Slip's head, but it was because you and I talked about what if Slip was more than one person. And that sort of spun out into a whole bunch of different ideas. Now, originally, go ahead.
Yeah, I had no idea who.
Yeah, you didn't know who.
No, I'm sorry.
And in a way that kind of helped, because Slip, originally, when we started season 2 in 2018, was it 2018? Yeah. No, it wasn't 2018, but that was when we started planning it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is when we started planning it. So you were, I went back through our messages. December 19th, 2018, I sent you this message. Okay, so imagine you're a disgruntled military guy or investor, whatever, and you're getting your brain backed up into the brain database for the first time. Imagine also your group of colonialist military jerkwads and rich bastards had recently seized control of or destroyed a series of AIs defending and running the space station that your group of jerks has invaded. Now imagine that one or more of those AIs has fragmented and is hiding parts of itself throughout the systems of the weapons platform you're slowly rebuilding into an artificial sun. And now at last, imagine that a fragment of one of those escaped AIs hid inside what seemed to be a dead machine, and that dead machine is also the mechanical body that said disgruntled sun person is having their brain backed up into. He said, I'm a fan of this hypothetical. So this mystic would be the mind of a horrible capitalist and a degenerated AI unintentionally mixed. And then we were saying that would also explain how they could do this weird shit in the real station because they're subconsciously manipulating the systems around it.
Right.
And as you may have noticed throughout the history of our story, I am a really big fan of things that seem like magic actually having a weird technological explanation. So that genesis of Slip. At the time, Slip, when I was first planning out who's in Slip's head, Slip also had fragments of the person who was originally, or the original person who Whiskey Tango would become. What am I saying? The original person who would go on to become Whiskey Tango was a part of Slip's mentality.
I suspected that.
Yeah. And that was why they'd had that sort of connection. But we decided not to do that for obvious reasons. Who else wants to share? What are your favorite characters to play?
I can jump in.
Yep.
I think of the ones so far, Augustus was definitely my favorite. Not even...
Yep.
Not even so much for that, but Augustus was a lot of firsts for me.
Yeah.
I think I still wasn't in... I think at the time that we started planning, the only other thing I was in flight risk, and Anarchy has a different energy, but she's still, a big nerd.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Augustus was my first, social character.
You've really grown into a lot of those roles in the many, many streams that you're on.
Yeah, it was definitely really great practice, and also just, the first time playing a baddie, there was definitely, especially the penultimate episode, at least for Augustus there, where, it was a lot of feelings. It was like, oh, sweet, my thing worked, but it's like, oh, no, it's a scuzzy thing. I don't feel good about it working. So it was just interesting, and I think especially because, we discussed early on, Mike and I, that it was going to be a party conflict, so I definitely didn't know what was going to happen with Augustus, but they were very much built just to be the total opposite of Maeve. So it was cool to, have to settle in and out when we made the character switches.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to how well we all get along as people, that the collaboration in how can we make Augustus just the worst?
The worst.
I don't feel like it ever led to any personal discomfort or conflict or friction, because we understand each other pretty well, and we know what we're doing here.
Yep. Yeah, my wish to slay Velvet in combat is purely romantic.
It truly is.
Yeah.
I think I even said that verbatim when I was coming up with Augustus. I'm I'm just going to make the worst person.
I remember this. You explicitly said the worst.
And I was like, cool, do that.
You did it, though. You did it.
Yeah, you really, really accomplished it. It was great.
It was a balancing act as well, because I want to give characters spotlight moments, and every time I was looking at, okay, well, I need to spotlight Augustus, and then there was always this sort of visceral reaction of but Augustus sucks. But Velvet is so good at playing this character, but this character sucks. It was fun. It was fantastic work you did as Augustus.
I have so many mind pictures of Augustus just being this looming, creepy other mother that you described them as, just looming over the other two characters. And it was just great, just imagining this. I want to say Tim Burton, evil but very slimy character, and then just this very hardened but goofy revolutionary, and then CD, just the moral gray in a sense, just being completely not so involved in other things that they don't notice, and I thought that was interesting. when I pictured that in my head, but
It was a much more disparate party in season
Mhm.
2 than we had with the Hub Kids.
Oh yeah, no, the Hob Kids are like this tight, like family, well-oiled machine sort of thing.
Yeah. Trudy, I think you've really only played Zora regularly.
Yeah, I had Zora and then I had Faye in the side story.
Yeah.
And I mean it's really hard for me. It's kind of like choosing your favorite child. But I think what usually happens to me, and this isn't all games, the character that I like the most happens to be the one that I'm playing at the time. I tend to just get really obsessed with whatever I'm, playing, or if I'm writing or if I'm drawing, whatever one thing that I'm on at that time. I kind of get obsessed about it, and that becomes the one thing that I really enjoy doing. And that's just how my brain works. So for right now it'll be Zora, but we'll see. Once I start playing someone new in season 3, I'm sure they'll be my favorite.
Was there anything about playing Zora that was like a stretch for you? It was different from what you're used to doing.
I mean, the whole setting is different from anything that I've ever played in. Most of the games that I've played in have been, D&D settings. So it was interesting getting to react to something that didn't seem, I don't know, played out and just based on a bunch of archetypes.
Right.
So I think for me, having to react to things that were actually surprising was was very different compared to some of the other games that I've played in over the years.
Now, you and I have a different background than I have from the rest of the current party, in that you and I have known each other for over a decade.
I think so. And
Very long time now.
We met, I think, on the Super Robot Wars mush.
Yeah. So we used to play characters together on a mush, which is a text-based role-playing game that was a multiverse thing.
Yeah, and that's very different from what we have going on here.
Hold up, that's cool as hell.
It was really fun.
Yeah, no, I started playing on these text-based role-playing games. They're called mushes, muds, muxes, or mucks, and it depends on the code base they're on. And they've been around since, I believe, the 80s, when people would log onto them through Usenet or some shit. But I started playing on these way too young. I was about 12. And yeah, I mean, the one where Trudy and I don't know if that was the first time we met, but it was certainly where we got to know each other best.
Yeah.
Was Super Robot Tizen.
Yeah, and I remember you also ran combat on that mush, right?
I would occasionally run things there, but I was always I would start scenes and, want people to get in trouble and cause trouble. I played Amuro Ray there from the original Gundam, but I played him as an older character because the timeline was past that. So it was kind of interesting looking at what's this character going to be like in a world where every other robot, mecha, anime, where they're all real at the same time. And he's just this burnt out, traumatized guy who's doing his best.
Had you really run anything before running things on Super Robot Tyson? Did that kind of give you the courage to, maybe run something like a tabletop game, or?
I had never really considered playing tabletop. Well, actually, that's not true. In high school, I tried to get my lunch buddies to play lunchtime tabletop games with me. I had never played one, had never run one. And I was like, you all want to like play D&D or something? And they're like, sure, we'll try it. And then I went to the hobby shop and found out that I would have to spend about $100 to get all the books for D&D, and said, fuck that. Asked the hobby shop owner, do you have any games that's just like one book? He gave me this thing called Talislanta, which is they boasted on it, everything's in this book. You don't need anything other than this book. And that's because the book is huge and extremely poorly organized. There's nothing is balanced at all. And it kind of sucks. But
wow.
It was a huge disaster. My friends weren't really into it. And so it wasn't until I got online and started playing tabletop games with the YouTube crew, with like Smug and Noel and Mike and Farrell and them, that I started thinking maybe I could do this too. But even from there, I tried to run some more story game style games with them, and it just not really their style. So that was about when I started thinking, well, I'm not really enjoying these types of games as much when I try to run them. What other games are out there? And if this group of friends isn't really into the kind of games I want to play, can I find some people who are? So I put up that recruitment thing on YouTube and found these wonderful people.
That's us.
Wonderful. What?
We're people.
But to answer your question more succinctly, Trudy, I think, yeah, that was sort of the genesis of my desire to run and tell stories collaboratively. Between there and I played on a Transformers one where I would run some scenes and, with Pat and them and Dustin and so on, who I brought in to do in-gov service with you.
I know. I miss those guys.
Yeah. I still talk to them on Twitter. You can probably bother them there.
I still talk to Pat on Twitter sometimes.
Okay.
I need to go into the favorite character I played.
Yes.
My first answer is, again, like Trudy, I have a hard time picking, but kind of like the first thing that viscerally, I would say like the first character I had the most fun playing and it kind of changed things was Tully.
Oh
my God.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I did not expect this answer. Yeah, did not expect this answer, but it does make sense. Please expand.
So to expand a lot of my, I think roleplay really, to go into some philosophy here, roleplay really starts when we're kids and we start playing with toys with other people or maybe by ourselves. I know I did it a lot by myself, and then eventually like with a friend, when it's like, oh, let's interact with our toys or tell stories with our toys. And I know some people it's more like, well, we're going to do a battle or we're going to do this or whatever. And for me and my friend, we just came up with this good friend who I'm still friends with from very young childhood. Not very young, but 4th grade. Anyway, she and I would play these really weird things with like toys from McDonald's of like lions from the Lion King. And I kind of would always want to be either the very nice character or, of course, the very cool, like self-assured character, because, I'm not the cool, self-assured person. It was kind of this fantasy. And then I kind of gravitated to being Keva because I was like, well, I want to be the character that is, I want to be useful, I guess, was it? And I want to be, I'll try to, I was kind of afraid I would get overpowered and be the quiet, well, I'm going to just kind of try to fill in this niche that other people don't want, which is kind of like the solid healer at first was my thought. But then Velvet was like, oh, well, I'm going to do an apothecary. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not the healer. Well, then I guess I'll kind of be a tank. And then Mike was like, well, Emran's this big, strong guy. And I'm like, I don't know what the heck I am. And from there, Keva kind of just became, I want to say, like the Katara or the Aerith or whatever. And I was like, well, that's nice. That's good. And I kind of got used to playing her as that. And I kind of got used to that role. But then it was sort of like, well, okay, play whatever. We're going to try this system out. And I had done the Blue Fairy, Maria, which was kind of weird and didn't feel as good to me. And then I played Terry, which was just sort of me trying to be as goofy as possible, but then like really, I don't know. And it just felt really good to be just this oddball character that, okay, they were strong, which a lot of people really gravitate towards when they role play. They want to be like the murder hobo. And for me, I was like, well, I don't want to do that. But then it was kind of fun having it be like, well, this character is just complete chaos. So maybe they'd be a murder hobo. But that's just because things went south in a way. And it didn't get to that point of where it was full on murder hobo. But from then, it was kind of like, well, I don't have to, obviously before then I had realized I don't have to be, just the kind of sideline thing. And honestly, I know that I can be a little overpowering in conversations, but that's partly because of the fact that I'm afraid that I will be forgotten or drowned out, if I'm going to go in a little psychologically there. So then CD got to be really fun to play because it was kind of a nice balance and they were kind of their own thing. So they could be really crazy and kooky in a way I really liked, but also useful sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were going to say, well, what, like, if you were like, well, okay, give us a real answer instead of Tully, then I'd say, okay, CD.
Okay. You got to explore new spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think for me, I don't know if this question is directed at me too, but
you're a player too.
Yeah.
Because I have so many characters and they all get so little screen time comparatively, I don't really get to dig into them on screen. But I, for a lot of characters, I have, the deep lore in the back of my mind. But for the ones that are my favorites to bring onto the screen and have them do stuff, I mean, obviously, Mandukai is, top 5 for sure, because she's just like, in a lot of ways, a pure power fantasy. She's, she's powerful. She is funny. She's flirty in a way. And like, she's just got all of these things that, who wouldn't want to be like Mandukai? But I got to, throw some depth in there as well. Like Mandukai has to go through that arc of, well, okay, do I have to get involved now? Or can I just keep my people safe? Or do I have to get involved in this larger conflict? And the way that she moves into that role, I think was fun to go through. Beyond that, I think Lean is, of course, fun too. Just being sarcastic and sassy and shooting lasers. Let's go maybe a little more quickly through what is your favorite character that you don't play, and let's why don't we'll go down the list. So we'll start with Keekers. Your favorite character you don't play.
This is a cop out because they're an NPC. It's Terry. Because again, kind of sassy, very like different than you expect. I also like the backstory. They're a part of ETR. I just like their personality, like the Terry personality, and I always like the way they interact with people.
Terry's really fun. I based Terry on a character from a children's TV show that my oldest son was really into around the time when I was starting this planning for Terry, and that's what is that character's name?
My interest is so piqued right now.
So the show is Naughty Toyland Detective, which is on Netflix, and the character is called Deltoid. So Deltoid is this. All the characters are toys, and Deltoid is like a superhero action figure, and he's got that big buff look, wears a tank top and a cape, hair up in a giant buzz cut. I'll see if there's a image that I can share to all of you here.
I feel like that's kind of like a character archetype way, though, because it makes me think it's like, a little bit like Buzz Lightyear.
Similar idea, yeah. That's Deltoid there. So the thing that inspired me for Terry from Deltoid is the speech patterns for one, because Deltoid talks like this, and he's always saying, "Yes, it is I, Deltoid." Ha 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 ha. So I just took that, entirely for Terry because it was fun to me. Yeah, Terry's cool. Okay.
Characters should be fun first, and then, sorry, this is random philosophy from what I've experienced. Characters should be fun first, and second of all, not a huge pain to play with.
Yeah. All right, Mike, is your favorite character you don't play?
If it's PC, I think my favorite character I don't play is Crate.
Great.
Because I love the idea of an absolute meathead Pokemon trainer.
Excuse me, Satchel Folk trainer.
Satchel Folk trainer.
I need to bring him back somehow, but I don't know how.
the most outrageous character ever. But I think my favorite NPC that we've met that I wish I could play. I don't know what game you'd ever play a character like this, but I really want to play the Logistark.
That would be so cool.
I want to be a big ship.
Yeah, the Logistark was another cool idea. That one was she is inspired by the Culture novels by Ian M. Banks, where the ships are these massive AIs that they kind of view humans as cute pets that they take care of and protect. And so that's where the Logistark came from.
Oh, I did cheap out and not say a PC character, and I want to say maybe Veronica Sterling off the cuff here.
Oh gosh.
Because I love the idea of this character who has I love the character idea of this character that has a lot of power but isn't that smart. And so it's just sort of like, oh, what am I doing? Okay.
Veronica was a hell of a character, yeah.
She is a thing that exists.
Trudy.
Whiskey Tango, and I think that needs no real explanation.
Fair. The bad man.
Yeah. Bad man, but very compelling.
Yes.
Okay. The tragedy of Whiskey Tango that we never got to. At the end, Whiskey Tango was he-they. At the end, when he was clawing at his face and weeping outside the door there, it's because his memories also had been restored. And Whiskey Tango had originally been a partner of Alejo's. And because he was...
I fully figured that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought you had figured that out, yeah. Whiskey Tango was originally, again, a police abolitionist and anarchist activist, and the Solar Free State, and specifically General Griefer, said, no, I'm going to twist you into a monster. I'm going to make you that which you hate the most.
Whoa.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to save some pieces of him at least. That's something.
Yeah. Sucks to be Whiskey Tango, honestly, but we never really got into that. And
must agree.
I hate to say, but all I'm like is like, he's like Shadow,
the hedgehog.
What?
His memories got twisted around, and so Sonic Adventure 2 spoilers. He wants to destroy the world because he thought that his childhood friend Maria was telling him basically like, get revenge for me, but it had been twisted around, and it was really save everyone, protect everyone for me.
Velvet.
I think, so PC, I would say Alejo. I thought Alejo was super cool. I wish we had gotten like more of that angle. And then like NPC, well, my favorite NPC is Mantica, that's not secret, but I think for the ones that I didn't get to play, I would say Gentrifier, because I think out of everyone that we saw, like, we know all the Sunfolk are terrible people, but I think Jennifer was even worse than Augustus in that she said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, I still remember very carefully saying her full name, Jennifer Trefire, every time I referenced her. And I slipped up one time.
Yeah, I don't think we got it until you made the slip, and we were like,
I'm so dumb. I felt so dumb for 2 years.
Yeah.
She extremely sucks, but she was so easy to embody because there are so many of her in the world. Everywhere you look, there's a gentrifier. That person who is happily and gladly appropriating aesthetics without ever engaging with the cultures behind them, and just like profiting off of oppression, all that stuff. She's everywhere. Okay, the next question was for me. How did you decide what abilities the Splinter Kids got? Was it random or inspired by the characters' personalities? I always thought they fit everyone's personalities really well in a kind of roundabout way, and I wonder if that was coincidence or on purpose. That was on purpose. The Splinter Kids, the powers, I started off the season not knowing what kind of powers they were going to get, and because I wanted to know what kind of characters they were. And from there, I thought, what's an interesting power that's not like a common superpower that would fit in with how these players are engaging with their characters in the world? What's an interesting angle I can give them to engage with the world in the way that they seem to want to? And I don't know if that worked out perfectly, but the basic idea was Emran is a blacksmith, and so likes to shape things and build things. And so I thought, what if Emrin could shape one thing any way that he wanted? What if he could like embody this? What if he could see through it and become a part of it and be deeply connected to it? Because this material is the heritage of his people. So I want this material to be the thing that he has this symbiotic relationship with. So that's how the SGM came to be. And like you've asked before, it's come up several times. Why is it that Emrin can only do this with SGM? And it's because that's his people's heritage. The SGM was what built Pablon. It's what built these cities, what built the ships of the League of Orbital Nations. It was the material that was one of the triggers for the United Shareholders of America and their allies to come for the League of Orbital Nations. And because it is so tied up in the liberation of their people, I thought, we'll tie Emrin to this material in this way. That was how that was the intention there. And I don't know if it worked out entirely as I'd hoped, but Velvet, I saw Velvet was always very interested in this mastermind kind of route of planning things out, having eyes everywhere, and the domination or control aspect being important to Maeve, being able to control things and know things and impose her will on things. And so I thought, well, what's a power that could fit with that? Well, what if she can become a hive mind? What if she can control these creatures, these insects that can go anywhere, do anything, and some of them are going to be real big? And I felt that was going to be a fit for the type of personality I saw Maeve taking on. For Keva, the thing that seemed important to Keekers and to Keva when I was planning out this power was the connection between people, forming connections and tending to those connections and bringing people together. And so the hair was the blending power, was what would allow her to do that in a very literal way. So Keva can take elements from different things that she connects to and put them together and help them to understand each other or make a new thing in that way. And beyond that, they can be used to protect, which again seemed important to the character of Keva and Keekers. And I don't know if I've laid all this out like this before, but I don't know. What did you get from this? Was there anything that I was missing there?
I remembered that you had originally wondered, like, well, I wonder if Keva, you talked to me a bit about it, like, you would ask us specifically, way back when, do you mind their appearances being, or this sort of thing about them being altered? And I think, Velvet, you were like, oh, I have no problem whatsoever. I would love that. And for me, I was like, you had said something about Keva having like a safe, or I had done some equivalent
stuff was going to come out of her hands.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't like that, because to me, I don't know if I ever talked about that as much, and I know I get into this later about Keva. To me, that felt wrong and something Keva would hate, and something because I would hate if something came out of my hands, because my hands are one of my biggest things, if that makes sense. As someone on the autistic spectrum, I stim a lot with fabric, and touch is one of those really big things. And if my sense of touch gets messed up with something, I'm having a really, really hard time. Like, for example, when I was younger, I couldn't wear tights because I hated the way those felt. And to me, when I heard about that, I was like, I can't stand the idea of having something on my hand constantly. And then you had said, well, what about her hair, or this sort of like neural thing? I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Okay. Just as long as she doesn't lose all of her hair, because that would also be,
it'd be upsetting for you and for her, because her hair was important to her, as I recall.
Yeah, it was generally it's like a connection to her mother and all that. So yeah, I said she can lose some of it, but yeah.
That's how we got to the point where it would be just the strands in the front, like that come down from her temples. That's where the power lies. Oh, and yeah, obviously the other thing for Maeve was the transformation aspect, the physical transformation, being able to take on aspects of not only the creatures that she controls, but also just to be able to shape her body eventually as she wished in whatever way she wanted. So that, I think, fit again with some of the conversations that I had with you, Velvet, about what you wanted to do with her.
Yeah, no, and I definitely appreciated the check-in, even if it went like, hey, this is a thing. Would you be okay for that? I'm like, have you met me? Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was a swing in each one. And again, I was being more secretive than maybe I needed to be. But Mike, how did you feel about Emran's powers? I don't know if I've laid out for you the whole why of it before.
Honestly, at the time, I was just down for everything. And since then, it's become like kind of poignant because Emran lost his sight and I'm personally losing, like my hearing is degrading. And so, like, I definitely didn't play Emran the way I would have played Emran now.
Right.
And like, that's disappointing. There's a lot of different things that I would have done with hindsight in play. But yeah, to know the why of the SGM so particularly is very alleviating to my to my frustrated misunderstanding of like, I want to do this to all metal, Matt.
Yeah, I should have been very clear with that from earlier on. So I'm sorry I never went over that with you.
No sweat.
Yeah, I think speaking of things in hindsight, I would not have GM Fiat blinded Emran if I were running that now. That would have been a thing I would have said, are you okay with this? And it would also be something I would want to approach with much more, I guess, research and sensitivity than I did at the time, because there are blind people in the world. And that was, I didn't want to present it as a thing that ended Emran's life or utility or anything, but the confluence of, well, Emran's blind, but also Emran can still kind of see, and Emran can see in a new way. And it's just something that I'm not sure how I'd approach it now, or if I would just do it entirely differently.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I would probably do something differently. Just personally.
And obviously it's something I would these days just offer as an optional consequence. Is this something you're comfortable with doing with your character? As opposed to saying Emran goes blind from the sun. Yeah. But yeah, it's been 4 years. Yeah. 3.5 years since we started this. We've all changed a lot. And Zora's power is that she's like invested with these, I don't want to say holy abilities, because as we learned, it's not really a holy thing, but there's a connection between Zora and Iterar and the other fragments of Gov that still exist in the world that make her more than. And that sword, contains some parts of them as well. And actually, it's something that we'll have to think about moving into season 3, because we decided that Zora was on that first team of Wayfinders that is now stranded in Dr. Moonlock Powerbomb's world.
Oh no.
So the question would be like, would Zora still have access to her heightened strength and abilities there?
Huh.
That's something we can think about if we ever look beyond that veil.
Yeah.
Zora's just 5.5 feet tall now. And that's
it. Welcome to Keva's world.
Zora's still taller than I am, so I'm 5.5 feet.
Next question. Are Alejo Cabrera or CD coming back next season? If not, I am going to really miss both of their voices.
Yep.
This is a poignant thing because Helga had asked me this point blank a bit ago, and she had shared with me about Alejo's voice being very comforting to her.
Oh.
Because I hope she doesn't yell at me if I say this, but I didn't come off as something extremely bad. But if I'll double check with her and then let you know if you cut this out or whatever. But basically, it was like a family friend of hers had that similar accent from way back, and she's like, "Oh, it's like I'm talking with him again or hearing him." Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's coming back. Yeah. You've convinced me.
Maybe it's good then. I'll ask her. But anyway,
I'm gonna go cry.
Sorry. The answer
every time.
The answer is CD is coming back. I can't let go of them because, again, I love them and their quirky ways. And I don't think I'm probably not going to end up playing as them. That's unlikely, but they are going to be at least a NPC that does have is in control of certain things that I will play as them to control, I guess is one way of putting it.
Yeah, they're going to be in the faction that you as a player are adopting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that brings us to the last question from Helga, which is actually more of a comment. Helga says, you should call the podcast SOBS, S-O-B-S, for short, because I ended both finales in tears. Well, you're not alone there.
Fair. Pretty sad.
Yeah. I certainly had a lot of feelings in both finales.
Got rough toward the end.
I do like shortening it as that, though. I really do.
Okay. Questions from Dwayne. If you could play one of the other PCs, which would it be? We've kind of talked a little bit about your favorite character you don't play. So if you could play one of the other PCs, what do you think, Keekers?
Yarrow.
Yarrow?
Yarrow.
Yeah.
Can you do the voice?
Oh, God. I need something to say.
Let me try.
I mean, can Keekers do Yarrow's voice?
Hell yeah.
Well, I expect I could probably pull off that sort of voice, but
yeah, it's pretty good.
I don't reckon I could probably come up with as good as metaphors as my dear, dear friend Michael.
He's got to be phlegmier. I feel like he needs more phlegm.
Yeah.
If there's one thing you can say for Michael Blood, they're full of phlegm.
Michael Blood.
Speaking of, if I could play another one of the PCs, I do want to Crate, but I want to play Crate in a Satchel Folk RPG and not in Split Stories of a Broken Sun.
Like a little pixel JRPG, yeah.
Yeah, just like a. But if I had to choose a different PC, I think I'd want to play Keva because I love halflings and Keva gives me heavy halflings vibes.
Yes.
Yeah, my dad calls me and my mom hobbits.
No. That's brutal.
Yeah, well, we're both very short and our feet can get hairy.
So there you go. So they say.
Yeah. So they say. But what was I going to say in regards to that? I don't remember what the heck I was saying.
All right. Trudy, if you could play one of the other PCs.
Oh, geez. This is one of those things that's really hard. I think I'd suck at playing most of the PCs.
Not true. Emery has no personality. Go for it.
That's not true.
Well, I'm not good at accents, and I'm not good at playing funny characters. I'm like, my instinct was I'd like to play, like, if I were any good at it, I'd want to play like one of Pat's characters, like Squall, just because they were so ridiculous. And but I suck at playing very ridiculous characters. I'm gonna try and push myself and change that this season, but we'll see how it goes.
I'm gonna play Squall, but go back and resurrect Hector and just be nice.
Hector and Faria just deserve a break.
Truly. I mean, you could just play all of us, Trudy. Just make us like Chimera.
Ooh, Velvet, what? No, ew.
This isn't Full Metal Alchemist.
I'm gonna blend everything into one being AI, and then Trudy plays it.
No, I mean, you guys are, or rather, you people, you folks, are just so good at what you do, and you know, sometimes I kind of feel like I'm out of my head. That's not quite the phrasing that I wanted. But that I'm just out of my field.
You do incredible, though.
No. Yeah. You guys are the great ones.
It's just us, like, all exhibiting, like, major imposter syndrome, which is the real thing. Everyone deserves recognition here.
Yeah, I do suffer from imposter syndrome, so guilty as charged.
I mean, I think you came up with some of my favorite things in Street Magic. So Please don't feel out of your depth. Your
Yes.
creativity.
That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. Depth.
Okay, Velvet.
Actually, that's a great segue. I would have actually loved to have played Zora, but I don't think I would have been able to pull it off. For a variety of reasons, I've never been able to play like legitimately pious characters. The closest I get is a warlock planning to overthrow their patron. So anyone that could like do that as well as you have, Trudy, is chef's kiss.
As in selfies, as in role playing, Velvet is addicted to angles.
I mean, you know, I think most people think I'm a cute, but I've definitely been called obtuse.
Boy.
I think
Oh,
we
wait,
need to like warm you up to piety. So like we'll start you off by being a Jedi, because then it's like a piety towards a Force that's not necessarily a being.
Not the Jedi, no. They're all about repression. Wait.
Have you not listened to Flight Risk?
I'm talking about no, you're right. I was thinking more like the Qui-Gon Jinn type of, but okay.
Yeah, Qui-Gon Jinn was definitely out there with like several VDs.
Qui-Gon Jinn was the Jedi the most into eugenics.
Yeah.
Super true.
Oh, Qui-Gon.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Colleen.
Okay.
I just have opinions.
I understand what you're meaning to say, Colleen. I get it.
Okay, good.
And you play like a character with a piety towards an ideal, as opposed to a deity.
Exactly. Thank you. Please, thank you for understanding. That's what I meant. I don't mean.
No, I'm a big grouch, and I bullied you, and I apologize.
Yeah, and thinking back to when I first started playing Zora, everyone else was goofy. I kind of felt like I had to play someone straight, you know.
Yeah.
It made the podcast hysterical.
Yeah, it was
great.
When you
the Zora as the straight woman to especially Squall, but like even Quanjoy got a little goofy at times. But it was just like Zora and Squall were like polar opposites in almost every regard. Real odd couple power there.
I remember feeling really sorry for you the whole game session. I'm like, this is probably not what ARP was expecting.
This is pretty much what I expected, putting the three of you together. If I could play one of the PCs, which would it be? Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought of that because I guess I wasn't considering myself as a PC, so I thought maybe this question wouldn't apply. I think I'd play Slip. I think I'd want to play Slip.
Yeah, you give Slip energy.
Yeah.
The nervous energy, definitely.
Well, I understand that deep anxiety.
Just everything is going to go bad at all times.
Yeah. Like the social anxiety that plagues my every moment of existence was, I think, would slot nicely into playing Slip. Did your character evolve the way you thought they would when you first came up with them, Geekers?
Oh, okay. So, I'm so glad I prepared answers or vague ideas of answers ahead of time.
That's why I gave the questions ahead of time.
Yes, thank you.
It was much appreciated.
This is funny because I was reflecting on this during Cobra Kai. And that show makes me introspective about the ideas of nobody's really necessarily bad. They just have bad experiences that then they either react positively or negatively to. But anyway, with Keva, I didn't go into it basically wanting to have her reflect me as much, but I think a lot of my own personal things came in. So, for example, I kind of went in wanting her to be more typical brained, and I realized that there were certain things about myself or that were like myself coming out into her. And then I kind of started leaning into it because I realized it was kind of pointless. So basically, I didn't think Keva was going to evolve into an Aspie and also reflect my own feeling of inadequacies, but I kind of let that happen after a little bit. I let my guard down, and I feel like that was rewarding in a way.
Yeah.
Because, again, I would say Keva's one part of myself. And I would say CD is another part of myself in a way. And I think that's kind of one of the things that just kind of happens when you role play. There's something about yourself that does get reflected into a person when you do it, because it's you who's doing it.
And yeah, I do think that was rewarding. Like, as I've mentioned before, our show is very small and we don't get a lot of engagement from audience members. Like, I know people are listening. I know that there are people listening. But when I do get feedback on the show, rare as that is, an inordinate amount of it is people saying that they really appreciate seeing an autistic character that's not the only thing about them, but like there are these signals that you put into your characters that allows those people with autism who are listening to the show to feel represented and understood and seen. There was a very excited one that I showed you. I believe it was from Eliza, and just this really excited, like, oh my God, like Keva stims.
Yeah.
And they were just so excited to see that type of, representation of their character without it being the only thing about the character, like you so often see in media.
Oh, yeah. Like, you say like these bad representations, like Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, who they just made him odd, and then they're like, oh, I guess he is autistic. And it's like, that's not what autism is. It's not an oddity. And I would say, as someone who found out that they were on the spectrum a lot later in life, I have that on Twitter, that I found out when I was 19. And I was already like, I had always had like, oh, well, I have a hard time making friends, and I have a hard time doing this, and I don't know why. And I guess I'm just a dysfunctional person. And then having this answer come up eventually, I think, has helped me. And of course, it also gives me a name to curse under my breath if I'm having a bad day. But I think it was kind of healing to have that be reflected in Keva and kind of voice certain things I've felt in that thing. And to flip it over and change subjects the way I want to always is with CD. I didn't expect CD to end up having as much heart, if that makes sense. I originally had played the idea of CD just being this straight up being of death and healing, and basically just being all about, oh, I'm trying to fix this and do this and take care of the dead, and but then CD became a lot more of a person, which surprised me.
Yeah, I think the season 2 characters, a lot of the ideas that we started off with were fairly, I guess, a little less fleshed out, because there was maybe I'm speaking out of my butt here, but for me, there was a greater level of faith that we would find them by bouncing them off of each other. And I think that really worked. Thank you. Mike.
All right, so when I made Emran, I've been playing role-playing games for like my whole life. It's my earliest memory. But when I made Emran, I made an absolute nothing character. I just imagined Hank Swordman, and that's who I'm gonna play. And just like you said, Matt, it just over the time just eventually became a person. I'm not sure of any conscious decisions that I made to like have Emran be a certain way other than belligerent blacksmith, and that he got so much more interesting and emotional over time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that has to do with us like getting to know each other, of course.
I think getting to know each other, and I think part of this in season 1 was also because by chance, basically, we all ended up in a lot of situations where it was just you. It was just your characters, and there wasn't anyone else around. And you were interacting with strange things beyond comprehension more than other people. And I think that really pushed all of you to find how your characters would respond to all this wild shit. So I don't know, I'm not going to take full credit for that or anything, but it's just because we just happened to keep picking these directions to take the story that ended up being isolated. It ended up kind of like the same way a show might do a bottle episode, but it was almost a bottle season.
Word.
Trudy.
Yeah, so when you first asked me to kind of play in the side story, I didn't know anything. I hadn't listened to your podcast, and I basically only knew what you told me, which was we were playing the bad guys, and you had kind of filled me in a little bit on, I guess, the world itself. And so I wanted to play someone who was, like a straight character because, the other people we were playing with, I knew wouldn't be able to keep that going. But I also kind of wanted to play someone that was like sympathetic, I guess. Like
Right.
Zora really thought that what she was doing was the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she turned out to be wrong. And I think that even in real life that, there's people out there that are like that really think that the way that they're, going about living their lives is the right way. And so I thought I was just going to be playing her, for that one shot, or maybe just a few one shots. I didn't anticipate her playing her for the longer term. So, I never expected getting her to where she is. And I'm still trying to figure out where she's going to land. And, now that she kind of has some time to herself with like the time skip, I'm hoping that when we see her in the future, she'll be a little more steady and less being pulled by the seat of her pants through all of this craziness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting because I liked the character of Zora so much, and that's that is part of why I thought, why don't I get Trudy back on the show? Why we're coming up to the finale, and I asked Pat and Dustin as well if they wanted to come to the finale. They weren't able to make room in their schedule, but by that point, it's like, well, Zora's here. She was here for the finale, so she should probably be here when the characters wake up on the sun. And that's what led to bringing you back in for that. And I was very glad that you agreed to that and have stuck around.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Velvet,
Like pretty cool.
Yeah.
We love having you.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys.
Oh gosh, Maeve is interesting because Maeve is in a lot of ways too close to home, and maybe that's why she hasn't grown a terrible amount. Broken Sun was essentially my first serious kind of TTRPG experience. I think before that, I had only had a couple of sessions of D&D with a local group before things broke up because of scheduling differences, and some people had beef and that type of stuff. And then I couldn't find a group, like even online. I couldn't, and I was about to throw in the towel, like, well, I just don't get to play these until I randomly saw the casting call from ARP on their YouTube channel, and I was like, fuck it, I'll apply.
I'm so glad you did.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's funny because 2017 was like the shitty year. Like I came out to my family New Year's Eve of 2016 into 2017, and there were like 3 days of silence before they were very shitty about it. And it was that transitional period of like, end of senior year of high school into freshman year of college. So, a lot of people skipped states. A lot of people just dropped me after I came out. So it was like a good 6 or 7 months of just like total isolation and dissociation until I got on Broken Sun, that I just wasn't talking to anyone. And that really informed Maeve, because Maeve's just angry. Or she started at that point where she had been so angry for so long that then it was just kind of that numb kind of angry.
Yeah.
So that informed her a lot. And, I think we've mentioned it maybe on the Bird app, on some of the posts, or just in conversation amongst ourselves. I don't remember. But Maeve is trans, and I tried to fit that in through just subtle descriptions as best I could. I don't know how well I conveyed that, but that's why kind of that metamorphosis was so meaningful and poignant. Because even then, before ARP said that was going to be like one of her powers, I had tossed out ideas and made it known that she was going to try to figure out if the nanites could kind of help alleviate the dysphoria in any way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that pretty consistently while we were working through Maeve and the type of character she was going to be together. And I remember one of the things I would do differently is you were telling me about there are these natural ways that people historically have, taken this herb or eaten that thing or the other to help them with their transitioning. And my line at the time was there are a lot of good things about how the domain of Gov, how Gov's domain works, how the Church of Gov works, because I didn't want it to be the same kind of dystopia we always see. I wanted it to be dystopic, not because all the same prejudices exist, but for other reasons. And one of the things I had at the time was the Church of Gov accepts trans people. However, it still discriminates against them by saying being trans is like a score multiplier for your debt because it makes your life harder. Therefore, you pay off your debt more. And that's another thing where it's like, at the time, I didn't know I was a part of that community, but it's something where I should have thought about that more and, consulted with people about that more and been more open and collaborative about it with. But I was glad that we got to the point where Maeve's powers allowed her to transition, and probably that we should have let that happen faster. But I was glad that we were able to do that. Your characters evolved the way you thought they would when you first came up with them. Famously, I guess I'll talk a little bit about Den and Lean. Well, I don't know if it's famously. Again, we have like 10 listeners. Famously amongst the people.
10 of the best listeners ever.
Yeah.
You're all wonderful and we love you.
We're a small, tight-knit family.
Just like Vin Diesel would want.
Original story of this podcast was a novel that I started writing about 10 years ago now. And in that novel, Den is the main character. And he goes through a lot of the things that the characters that you played ended up going through. Like he discovers that the world that he lives in is not what he thinks it is, and that he's actually on a space station, and he has this connection to the broken sun that no one can really explain, but which makes him of interest to the church. And so the character of Den is like the chosen one, basically, and Lean is like the foil to that because she's his sister. She's also descended from people from outside of the station, and that also gives her some type of connection to the sun and all that. So Den and Lean are kind of on rails in a lot of ways because they're following the chosen one and their foil narrative, and that just keeps going. Like Den is now the leader of the Church of Gov, and he's trying to implement these different reforms and this and that and the other. He still sucks because he's this chosen one archetype, but he's one of those characters where like he still firmly believes that everything that he's done has been for the greater good of the purpose of destroying the rot at the heart of the Church of Gov and rebuilding it better than it was before. And to that end, he has done so many horrible things, like a lot of chosen one characters do. But he hasn't ever really accepted that maybe this isn't the only way. Maybe he's not the only one who can do this. So he's still on that track, I think. So in answer to that question, yes, I think he's still evolving the same way that I thought he would when I first came up with him. Okay, what was the most unexpected or hilarious thing to happen to your character so far, Keekers?
Okay, so for Keva, one thing, it wasn't a big thing, but I thought it was really hilarious at the time. And I still look back on it and get a chuckle, is the Tasty Pasty montage.
Yeah.
And just...
Keekers?
Sorry, there's been something that's happening here.
Do you need to take a break?
I need to take a break for a second and talk this out. But basically, it was the Tasty Pasty. I'm trying to bring it back as a running gag a little bit. I hope that's not too forced. And then with CD, it was the violin situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was just something that happened. serendipitously, and it wasn't exactly funny, but also, well, it was a little funny that was going to be CD's reaction, but also just out there.
Oh, thank you. Mike?
The funniest thing that's happened to Slip is definitely successfully stealing a tank with Augustus and then delivering it to the doorstep of our enemies. That was so dumb. And it was delightful. I think not something funny that happened to Amryn, but something funny that happened to me while playing Amryn was forgetting about gravity. And
the reverse repel?
The reverse repel, I get clowned in my group chat like once a month. I think one of my friends will bring it up because they've all listened to that part of the podcast.
Good.
And I get clowned on real hard for reverse repelling. Oh, I think the funniest thing that happened to Amryn was trying to punch debris that was falling and fully breaking his hand.
Yeah.
That was dumb of me.
It was an understandable instinct, and it's just the dice didn't roll the way we would hope they would in there.
Nope. And they haven't since.
Trudy.
Yeah, not really hilarious, but unexpected. Should no doubt be a surprise. Finding out everything that she thought was true was really just a lie, and that she's been manipulated. That was extremely unexpected for me, and it was extremely unexpected for Zora.
Mm.
As far as hilarious, God, the whole thing with Squall, everything with Squall.
Squall?
Just, yeah. Oh, the goat, everything.
Velvet.
I think the funniest thing with Maeve was that first episode, just how long it took to get over that wall.
No.
Oh my god. That will forever just haunt my TTRPG career. And I think for Augustus, the funniest thing was failing and dying.
It was super funny, and not gonna lie, I had to stifle myself from laughing when I killed you.
I knew it too after the solo episode. I was like, I rolled too well. I'm gonna pay for it later.
So bad.
It was setting you up for a big fall. Yeah, I mean, that wall thing, again, that was on me. I wasn't as experienced a game runner as I am now. Like, nowadays, that's the kind of thing that I would hand wave. Yeah, you get over the wall. It's fine. Yeah, this is not an important obstacle. It doesn't matter.
It felt so important to me.
It was so important. It set the scale
It
for
hurt
like
me.
the challenges.
It hurt me. That wall is my mortal enemy.
Yeah. Okay. Who's your favorite NPC? I think we basically did this already. But yeah, who are your favorite characters that you don't play? You already mentioned your favorite NPCs, so we've got that one. Okay. If you had to cast either Sesame Street or Muppets characters as the Broken Sun characters, who would play whom?
Snuffy as Amryn.
You think so?
Nice.
Snuffleupagus.
Yeah. That's a good call.
And then Beaker as Slip.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I think I love it.
It's so hard to think of Zora as a Muppet or a Sesame Street character. All I can think of is Big Bird.
Big Bird. Hell yeah, Big Bird.
I love to imagine Big Bird with a big ass sword.
I was going to say the eagle guy. What's the eagle guy's name?
The eagle guy.
Sam
yes.
Eagle.
Sam Eagle.
Sam Eagle. Yeah, I can see that actually.
I say, this looks unsafe.
Yeah, who do you think for Augustus? Is there a Muppet or Sesame Street character?
I would have said Big Bird just because of the height, and then Maeve would have been the Count.
Oh, the Count. Yeah, that makes sense.
1 legion of bugs. 2 legions of bugs.
Legion of bugs.
I figured it would either be that or Oscar the Grouch.
Yeah, it was either Oscar or the Count. I'm like, aesthetic-wise, the Count, but like personality-wise, probably
sure.
Oscar.
Sorry, interjecting here as I'm cleaning because they decided to show the house today.
Oh,
Yay.
Yeah, it's fun. Anyway, to quickly say, actually, Keva, personality-wise, I would say Big Bird because of very kind and benign, basically. And then for CD, I was thinking Gonzo because of how off the wall they are. Just replace the love of chickens with death.
Just a little bit of necro romance for you.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And of course, Mandakai would be animal.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Animal. Everyone knows that animal is trans. That's true. I'm claiming that right now.
So it's a question for me. How did the story progress compared to what you originally envisioned when building the world? Very, very differently. Like, we've hit some similar plot beats to what I had in the original novel outline, which I transformed into a season 1 to 3 outline. But it's extremely different. Like, in the original vision, there would have been a lot more direct conflict with the Church of Gov and its ministers and all that than we ended up having. And the getting outside stuff would have taken place much later than it did. But you all activated Hub extremely quickly compared to what I had been planning. So that was a big surprise. And they said the biggest curveball the players threw at you, that might be it. You're just like, nah, we want this ghost. Give us the ghost.
Give me the ghost.
Like, all right, let me just rewrite everything. So that was good. That was, I think, where we started to really have a huge deviation from what I had expected, and it's been so much better than those original plans. Let's see. Questions from me to all of you. Do you have a scene or a moment that you wish had happened differently? I think we've touched on this a little bit, but if you want to go into any more detail, Keekers, are you around, or are you?
Nearby, I have to make the bed and then move this to outside.
Okay, let's start with Mike then.
Mike is here. Do I have a scene or moment that I wish had happened differently? The tank scene. I really wish that I had thought more. I really get tunnel vision when I see a goal. And so I really wish that I had thought more and not caused the Battle of the Oasis. That is definitely something that feels bad.
Mm-hmm.
For Slip, I really wish that I had done something other than run away during our first confrontation with Whiskey Tango. But I was just like, no, I think Slip would be afraid.
Yeah, it made perfect sense for the character. And for the Battle of the Oasis thing, like, how would Emran have known?
There's no way
is going to light up. Like, there's no way for him to have known. Yeah, so I can understand the wish for that to happen differently. It did suck how it shook out for everyone there, but like, that's the kind of thing that there were many different potential triggers for how that could have happened. It just so happened that it was, well, I go and I turn on the ship.
Well, so you do.
Us sowing, then us reaping.
Trudy, do you have a scene or moment that you wish had happened differently?
I mean, not a specific scene or moment, but I do kind of wish that, I had done more to kind of friend up Zora with some of the season 2 cast. But maybe there'll be time to kind of get that going in the future.
There'll be time to get to know them for sure. Velvet, do you have one?
I don't really think so. I think everything has gone in a very narratively fitting way that I really wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, that's fine too. It's okay to be satisfied with things.
Well, I'm never satisfied. I mean, I wish I would have gotten to clock then. That's really the only change I would make.
Yeah.
There's still time though.
I mean, Zonin tried.
Oh, Zonin.
That was emotionally devastating. I thought he was going to die.
I also thought he was going to die, but, Jason told me about, I think Zonin is going to betray the party. I'm like, all right. He's going to get in touch with Den and then go out to meet him. I'm like, this is going to go so poorly. He's the final boss. No, Zonin went out there and got his ass thoroughly kicked.
I mean, it'd be like that sometimes, though.
It'd be like that sometimes. Keekers, did you go ahead?
So I was just saying that's the shonen arc, right? You got to get your ass beat before the training arc.
Now Zonin is going to show up in season 3 and swallow the emergency and become God.
Yeah, of course.
I think one of the things I regret the most was how CD interacted with Hector's corpse body. I think I would have changed it a little bit more. I would have consulted more with Mike. I mean, at the time, I wouldn't have changed it, but basically what CD did.
Okay.
It might have been better if Harros had been like, oh, maybe like there was a pool of people's DNA that had been taken, and maybe it was Hector or something. I don't know.
Okay. What was the biggest surprise for you? Keekers, if you're still around, you have that. Otherwise, we can come back to you.
Well, I think one of the biggest things was finding out that people had come in from the outside.
Oh, yeah.
And then the big thing that the emergency was a being. That just freaked me out because I thought it was just like a chain of events.
Right. There's that secrecy again. Mike.
Definitely horrified to find out that we were in a sci-fi game and not a fantasy game.
Yeah.
Same.
Was that disappointing for you?
No, because all I do is play fantasy games.
Okay.
So it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then I think there's one for season 2 that just absolutely blew my gaskets. And I can't remember what it was. I think it was the first, because I had completely forgotten that we'd had a conversation about Slip being multiple fragments. And then the first time it happened, I was like, oh, this is so dramatic. And then I went back and read our messages. I'm like, oh, I fully said yes to that.
That was when you went to the core and were having those memories. Okay. Trudy.
I feel like I'm just going to be copying everyone else, but like Keekers and Mike said before, but between the emergency and also finding out that this wasn't a fantasy game, I think those were really the two biggest surprises for me. I mean, I remember when we did play the one shot and we ended right at the end and we had the whole revelation. I mean, I was just like stunned because I'd never been kind of hoodwinked like that in a game before.
Yeah, I'm glad. I think that's the one thing that one of the things that I don't regret that much is keeping that part of it a big surprise, because I don't know. I think it turned out well. It was a nice surprise, a pleasant, interesting one, rather than oh, this sucks surprise.
Yeah, no, I mean it was definitely a good surprise.
Velvet.
The nanites ARP. You played us like a goddamn fiddle.
Yeah, I do love nano machines.
This person loves robots. You're a robot lover.
Okay. The biggest surprise for me, in addition to getting, getting Hub online so quickly, that was a surprise for me. And just the constant way that like I would feel like I was seeding certain things, and then you all would just go and find something else. And be like, we're going over there, and I'd be like, oh shit, what's over there?
I don't give a good goddamn about what you have prepared at any sort of Heretic's End. I'm going into space.
Yeah, so it was fun. Those surprises in season 2. I think let's see, CD deciding to play the violin in the middle of the when the sim thing was happening. That took me by surprise, and it led to a beautiful moment. That was a surprise for me as well. And just the whole last session, I think, full of surprises there. Okay. When did you feel you had an opportunity to really show off your character, Mike?
I really felt like I was thoroughly feeling my oats when I was playing Emerald during season 2, and we got on El Coco, and just me, Zora, and the rest of the party were just absolutely trouncing people. I was like, yes, look at Emerald, look at Zora. I was vibing hard.
That was a good scene.
And then with Slip, it's either got to be when Slip blew up an APC single-handedly.
Mm-hmm.
If I could fully on one die, didn't expect that to happen. And Slip's finale was delightful to play and really hard, but delightful.
Yeah, that was a really emotional session overall, like the whole thing.
I was crying. Just so y'all know, I'm now in my car recording.
Oh boy.
Oh, hi.
Yeah. Probably try to rearrange the cars a little bit so that I can be closer to the house and they can move. But that's the situation we're in.
Do you want to talk about when did you really feel you had an opportunity to really show off your character?
Definitely the time with the violin. That was a major changing point for CD. I had a notebook. Let me find the notebook.
Okay, we can come back. Trudy.
Probably when we had that one-on-one one-shot. I tend to really suck at taking the lead in any game that I'm in, just because I'm a little bit insecure. I don't know if you guys knew that about me.
Really?
No, I don't get it.
So when I was forced to
We
kind of
are
go,
all
yeah, when I was forced to go one-on-one with you, it was like I had no one else that I could really lean back on to make the hard decisions. It was me making all the choices. So I feel in that way, Zora wasn't quite as much in the background as she usually is.
Yeah, I got some really cool moments out of that. And like a lot of the approaches that you took were not what I was expecting from Zora either. I kind of figured it would be Zora rampaging through this facility, breaking everything in her way. Instead, she was being very smart and like, what's a way to approach this where I'm not putting myself in danger because I don't know the capabilities of these things.
Yeah.
And that helped me think of ways to try and engage Zora more when she was with the rest of the group. Like, Zora's not just I break things. Zora is capable, competent military leader.
Yeah.
Who is also very good at breaking things. Velvet.
Ooh, I think for Augustus, it was definitely the penultimate meeting with Gentrifier and then the actual finale itself of just kind of, just that moment of flying too close to the sun. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, just a little interrupt. I might like pop out for a minute as we move our cars, but then I'll be back on.
All right.
Just as a sort of thing. And your ARP, you're going to hear car noises when I start it up.
It's okay.
Car noises intensify.
This is the most extreme recording of Splinters of a Broken Sun ever.
Colleen is going to jump 14 buses in a Zamboni.
Oh, it's going to be a golf cart.
That's what we've got.
In Florida.
Velvet, you were saying.
Yeah, no, just those last two episodes with Augustus was kind of just peak, flying too close to the sun before hitting the ground. And then for Maeve, I think it was maybe that first excursion into the sun once she could like shapeshift. Because I think, even before that, though she had her bugs, it was still a lot of not administrative, but almost intel gathering kind of work. Like she wasn't beefy, but now she can like throw down. And I was like, yeah, this is fun.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely, again, one of those things where my expectations of, what will Maeve do with these powers? Oh, she's going to like turn into like, she get wings so she can fly above the battlefield and command her swarm, or she'll go and hide inside corners and things that people can't see her as she lines up her attacks. And instead, it's like, I turn into a spider centaur and I wreck shit. It's like,
aren't you tired of gathering reconnaissance? Wouldn't you rather just go ape shit?
Literally.
There was the one time I was afraid that you were going to kill the people before we questioned them with your acid. And that came out, and I felt bad about that because I'm like, oh no, Colleen, stop.
I mean, listen, if we're all gonna be like, if we're gonna be fair and keep it real, given my history of behaviors, that's a fair concern.
Yeah. Did you find your notebook, Keekers?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Good news is I don't have to move a car.
Yay.
Excellent.
Don't
podcast and drive, kids.
Yeah, so the
Keva moment?
Me turn around and park was at the end of season 2, actually, when
you're cutting out.
She and the Logistark.
You're working together with the Logistark to get the shield going? Okay. Keekers is cut out, probably due to being on phone data. But we can come back to that because we are on the last question at this point. What is a scene you wish had happened that never did or hasn't yet? Mike?
I want to see Alejo like just getting better.
Oh.
Yeah. He's been through it.
Just for a few decades of peace.
For sure. Trudy.
I don't know. I had these questions and this was one of those ones that I really didn't have an answer for then, and I was like, I'm gonna see if anything comes up before we start recording, and unfortunately I don't have anything now. Nothing specific anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. You have one, Velvet?
Yeah, I'm excited to have Maeve essentially meet her dad. I think we had mused on it a couple of times, but I think in my head I always just like, I don't know, resigned it to like both parents being dead, and then you dropped that on me, and I was like, ARP concerns.
Matthew Snapwave, you've done it again.
Sorry I cut out there. My bottom of my mic accidentally touched the power button.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you were saying the moment was the Legist arc at the end of season 2?
So Keva connecting to the Legist arc and making that giant laser. That was fun.
That was cool.
Really showed how Keva can kind of be a people person, despite people saying people with autism
Yeah, there's a lot of stereotypes.
Have bad social skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which are not borne out by reality.
Unfortunate things. No, actually, people with people with autism are hyper. A lot of us are hyper apathetic instead. So we close ourselves off a little bit or act differently, but we are feeling way more than typical people in feeling what you feel, basically.
That's the kind of thing why it's good to have own voices telling these stories, as opposed to having people outside those experiences try and tell a story that they haven't lived.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, Velvet, as I recall, if we looked at that street magic hacks list, one of the story beats was Maeve's dad showing up. So that's still something that's probably going to be happening in season 3.
I was so excited when I heard that thing. I'm like, oh, yes!
That's going to be such an awkward reunion.
Greetings, father. I am a spider.
Not even that. It's like, okay, do we shake hands? Do we bump fists? Like,
do we fight?
Maybe.
I think you guys should go out to dinner and binge.
Are there any last thoughts that anyone wants to share about seasons 1 and 2 before we close out our post-mortem and Q&A here?
Florida is very hot, and I am
Florida
glad.
is very hot.
I am glad. Sometime in season 3, I won't be in Florida anymore.
All right.
Nice.
Well, thanks for joining us, folks. We already did all our introductions at the top, and this is all going to be one big episode, so don't need to do them again. But thank you for joining us for our Q&A, and thank you to Dwayne and Helga for the questions. And thank you to all of you for answering my questions as well and sharing this conversation about the work we've been doing over the past 3.5 years. Yes, go ahead.
What's everyone's Sonic character according to the IMBTI chart?
Yeah, you did put that up at some point.
Oh,
yeah.
I've been meaning to look at that. Oh, I completely forgot. I'm sorry. I saw Sonic and just I don't remember anything until this moment.
You got to gear yourself up before engaging with Sonic. I got Shadow, surprising no one.
Where's the Sonic stuff?
That's great. Oh,
it's in the hub channel.
I'm Biggs the cat. I'm Biggs the cat.
You are.
I love that.
Great.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
I haven't taken one of these Myers-Briggs personality types ever since I found out about Myers and Briggs. But
same.
Yeah.
I just always remember the results.
I think I had INFP, so that would make me Silver the Hedgehog.
Oh, that's weird because that's mine.
Yeah,
Silver's a good angsty child that wants to help people, but very anxious.
I'm INFJ, so that would be Tikal. I don't know. I'm not Tikal.
Like the Mayan city.
Yeah.
All good choices.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to close out our post-mortem. Thanks, Sokka. I'm going to close out our post-mortem, and I think we're going to take a little break and then come back and talk characters for season 3.
Yeah.
Right on.
Sick.
Yeah, great.
So until the next time, all the best.
All the best.
All the best.
Love y'all.
Space insects.
Space insects.
Astronids.